कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, अरे कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो, कहत कबीर सुनो भाई साधो। साहब मिले सबूरी में, अरे साहब मिले सबूरी में, मन लागो यार फकीरी में।
This reminded me of these Yoga Sutras where it says likes and dislikes are a hindrance, but I cannot, I still have likes and dislikes. It's not that I can just say, okay, no, I don't want to have, and I want to still have.
Let's go into this. Is this something that would be significant to the others as well? Yes? Okay. Likes and dislikes. And whenever it is said that likes and dislikes are a hindrance, or that what you like depends on your conditioning, the easy and immediate conclusion is drop the likes and drop the dislikes. The moment you read a sentence saying likes and dislikes are a hindrance, the mind quickly concludes that it is being told to get rid of likes and dislikes. Now from here, one either tries the way of renunciation, the way of self-control, or one simply says that no, I have my likes and dislikes and I want to stay with them. I don't want to leave them. In both of these cases, in either of these cases, our concern is the object that we like. I don't want to drop it, or I want to drop it. Do you see this? Whenever it is said that likes and dislikes are a hindrance, by likes, you assume that the object that you like is being referred to. Is that not the assumption? Let's say I like orange juice, and it is being said that likes and dislikes are a hindrance, so you assume that it is being said that orange juice is to be dropped. Do you see this? Now you may drop orange juice, or you may say no, orange juice is very dear to me, I won't drop it. Is the statement from Patanjali or from this book, The Lover You Have Been Missing, about the object that you like or dislike?
It is about yourself.
I repeat this question. When Patanjali or when I advise you to be cautious of the likes, to observe your likes and know them, is it the object of liking or disliking that is central to the advice? Is the whole sutra predicated upon something external to you? No. We will go into it. The one who likes is always the subject in all wisdom literature. not the object of liking. The one who takes himself to be the subject, the one who likes, or the one who dislikes. And that one who likes or who dislikes is also called as the ego, or the false self. The great sages have not advised you to drop objects. That is foolhardy. They have advised you to drop yourself. Dropping objects is sometimes easy, sometimes difficult, but always useless. Do you get this? Sometimes it is easy to drop an object. Depends upon the kind of utility that object holds in your patterns of life. Sometimes it is quite difficult. If somebody says the object is your body, then dropping the body would be quite difficult. But whether it is easy or whether it is difficult, it is always irrelevant. Never take objects too seriously. It is the one who feels that he needs to be associated to the object is the subject matter of all our inquiry. Who is that one who feels that he needs to be associated to some object? What is this thing called? The need to be associated to some object. What is this thing called? Liking, attraction. Sometimes you also call it as love. Desire. The need to be associated with something. And the need to be associated with something is obviously coming from a perception that that particular thing would lead to a fulfillment of some kind. Do you see this? It is a certain fulfillment that you seek by liking something. And by disliking, you seek to secure an imagined fulfillment that you already have. You say that this is something that I have, it provides me fulfillment. If I lose it, then along with it I will also lose my. This is something that fulfills me, that gives a certain completion, a certain meaning to me. And if I lose this thing, then along with the thing I also stand to lose the fulfillment. Do you see this? So even when you are talking of things, essentially you are talking about your own fulfillment. No thing would matter to you if it were not promising or threatening fulfillment. Who is the one sitting inside who is continuously craving for fulfillment? Who is that one? He is the one who likes, dislikes. He is the one who chooses. He is the one who decides. He is the actor.
Ego.
Yeah? And his central characteristic is that he is always unfulfilled. Even when he feels that he is fulfilled, he is scared that this fulfillment might be lost, taken away. And hence, that fulfillment is always partial, conditional, imaginary, and false. So, both things taken together, the characteristic of this one sitting inside is that he is always unfulfilled. When you are advised, drop likes and dislikes, you are being advised, drop this sense of unfulfillment. We all carry this. We feel that a position, a job, a house, a man, a woman, some knowledge, some place will provide us fulfillment, don't we? That is how we relate to others in need of fulfillment or in need of securing fulfillment. That is our fundamental objective whenever we relate to the world, to the things, objects, persons in the world.
So someone who is enlightened will still have that too?
We do not know about such a person. We do not know what is enlightened. At least I don't know. So, but I know what is going on with the unenlightened ones, with the common folks, people like me. I know what's going on with them. So I would rather talk about that, the common phenomena, the everyday stuff in the mind. I do not know what is enlightenment and whether likes exist then, whether they don't. I would rather talk about this that we call as life. So this one who is sitting inside is the unfulfilled one, is he not?
Why are we calling him ego?
Because we call him as me, I. The word ego means I. With this unfulfilled one, we identify deeply. We feel he is us, he is me. And because we say he is me, so we call him the
Ego or I.
The ego or the I. Ego means I. Are you getting this? So what are we to drop? The object that promises fulfillment or the being that sits within and is always unfulfilled?
The being which sits within. Unsatisfied thing.
That feeling, that belief that I am unfulfilled. That is what is advised to be dropped. That deep notion that there is something wrong with me, that there is something missing in life, that there is something to be gained, that there is something outside of me so big that it will provide a final purpose, meaning and completion to life. And don't we feel that way, all of us? We feel an inner void and then we start looking outwards to fill that void. Have you not experienced that void? In fact, all experiences are nothing but experiences of that void. What we call as human experiences are all experiences of that void. Either that void gets filled and then we call it a pleasurable experiences. Pleasure is the feeling, the thought that the inner hollow is getting filled, that you are getting healed. And pain is the experience that the inner hollow is being deepened. And these are the only two experiences that we have. There is no third experience. All human experience can be distilled down to, brought down to these two fundamental thoughts. One says, I'm reaching there, the other says, no, I'm not reaching there. But both these thoughts assume that I am away from fulfillment. You can very easily talk of a variety of experiences, and you can quote at least 50 words from dictionary that denote different shades of experiencing. But I insist that all experiencing has to do with that hollow. You are being advised to drop that hollow. That hollow is a fiction. It does not exist. You just feel that it exists. You have been taught, trained, acclimatized to think that it exists. And you have internalized that notion so deeply that now that hollow rules your life. Every step that you take, small, big, in this sector, in that sector, in this zone, in that domain, doesn't matter which part of life you are referring to. All steps essentially become an exercise in seeking an imaginary cure to an imagined disease. That is what we call as the movement of human life. It is such a funny thing. One could call it absurd, one could call it tragic, one could call it comical. Firstly, you assume there is something wrong with you, and then you spend your life trying to correct the assumed wrong. How can you right something that is not wrong in the first place? How can you lose something that you never have in the first place? That feeling is being advised to be dropped. How does one drop it? The answer lies in seeing how does one hold it. How do you hold on to that feeling? We hold on to that feeling by continuing to act in ways that reinforce our feeling of incompleteness. The more we invest our life in achievement, in security, the more we convince ourselves to believe that there is indeed something wrong. The argument runs something like this: I have invested a lot in securing myself. Now I have invested a lot in securing myself. Time, energy, attention, life itself. When I have invested a lot in securing myself, it becomes very important for me to maintain that I was insecure in the first place. Do you see this? A man believes that he is being sieged from all sides. I am under a siege. So he invests a lot in armoring his house, in buying a lot of weapons, in maybe hiring soldiers and mercenaries. He invests a lot in all this. In fact, he invests himself totally in this. He is investing in nothing but this. Let's say he has invested 20 years of his life in this. shielding his house, screening each and every door and window, buying expensive ammunition. Now, is it not important for him to believe that he is
secure? He had been insecure.
that he is threatened? If someone now comes and tells him, why are you doing all this? There is no enemy. Then it would prove that all his life has gone waste. So the more you have invested yourself in these absurd endeavors, the more difficult it becomes for you to drop the one who was threatened and unfulfilled. Because now you say that to drop it is to drop my whole effort, and I am attached to my effort. I feel it was my investment. How can I let it go waste?
So, when in India I heard people married, they think they have married for 7 lifetimes or something like that. Is that the same thing that you think?
Yes, of course. It is there in every relationship. Your relationship with your thoughts, you have nurtured your thoughts, you have developed your ideologies since long. Now to drop that ideology means to drop all that effort and energy and time.
So one should not have this thought would be better.
Do not conclude yet. Maybe there is something else coming up. Who knows? You have been in a relationship since 10 years. A lot has gone into that relationship. Now you say, how can I drop it? There is a lot of investment. There is a lot of you in that relationship. Now even if that relationship pinches, hurts, is a terrible load, yet you feel like dragging on with it. The one who is unfulfilled is also an idiot. He won't drop his unfulfillment. He is so identified with it that it is no longer about saying that I am experiencing a lack of fulfillment. The statement has now become, I am the lack of fulfillment. Do you see this? The distance between you and that feeling has just disappeared. Now you are no more an observer, let alone a witness of that feeling. Now you are that feeling. You are not saying, okay, I am experiencing a feeling that there is something wrong with me. Now you are saying, I am the one who is having a hollow. I am the one. Now this is a statement of complete identity. A total union with rubbish. You see this? That is how we hold on to the hollow. By thinking of how we have nourished the hollow. We say so much has gone into maintaining this hollow. Now how can I drop it? It is like saying so much has gone into earning a disease. Now the disease is my property. How can I drop it? But that's how the argument runs. And it must be a very potent argument because it seems to rule the world. Sitting here we find it stupid. But you look at the condition of the world.
All politics is just.
And then you say it is not stupid, it is supreme. If you don't clutch it desperately, this feeling of hollowness will disappear on its own. Mark these words. If you do not keep nourishing it, if you do not keep providing energy and sustenance to it, this hollow would vanish on its own, which means no method is needed, which means no trick, no clever effort, no time is needed. It goes away on its own because it is not real. What is not real needs no effort to be defeated. What is not real is by definition waiting to disappear. You are the one who is not allowing it to die. Do you see this? So do not ask how to drop. Just see how you hold it. And when you see that you hold it because you feel that you are invested in it, because you feel that you are identified with it, and you see that to be identified with the hollow is to be identified with your suffering, then it goes away on its own. Can a dead man walk? But a dead man can surely walk if someone who is alive is determined to carry him along. Then dead men do walk. The ego is a dead man. But not only do we see it walking, it is not only running, it is actually running the world. The dead one is walking, running, and running the world. Because something that is alive is providing this dead one with a lot of fodder, with a lot of food, nutrition, energy, movement. Drop that support. Drop that support. The dead one is tired of being pushed, dragged, carried. Even that dead one wants to disappear. If you ever meet the ego and you ask it, what is your one wish? It will say, I want to die. I want nothing more than dying. Please, please let me go away. Please let me sublimate. You think the ego is your enemy? No, you are the enemy of the ego. You are not allowing the ego to pass away, to relax. You are maintaining the ego, you are unnecessarily pushing it. It wants to retire now. It wants to settle down and sleep deeply. You are the one who keep it active. Stop keeping it active. Stopping is the only method. All other methods talk of doing, moving, acting. And this doing, moving, acting itself is your bane. And hence all methods are bound to extend your misery. All methods use the disease itself as the medicine. They offer you more of the disease in garb of the medicine. They are bound to fail. Stopping is the only method. How to stop? by seeing how you continue. When you see the foolishness of continuing, you stop. When you see how tired you are of running, you stop. Do you see this?
Well, somehow, yeah, but it's not so easy, I think.
Not so easy for whom?
Like, for example, we talk about love, and like, usually for young people, they want to get married, but then, I don't know about India, but Western country, they have a high percentage rate of divorce. So somehow it doesn't seem to work so well. But still, if somebody is young and want to get married and don't find a suitable wife, it will be very heavy on his
mind, yes.
in his mind. It would be very, very difficult to drop this craving. And
you cannot drop the craving. What have we said for so long? The one who craves is fictitious. He is the one who has to be dropped. You want to drop the desire but maintain the desirous one. You want to drop what you like but you want to maintain the one who likes. Is it possible? We go back to the orange juice. We have still not been able to drop it. You want to drop orange juice, but you want to maintain the one who likes orange juice. Even if you drop it once, what is going to happen? Tell me.
After some time, you will
crave again.
He will crave again and he will somehow secure orange juice. We are not talking of particular likes and dislikes. We are talking of the one who likes and dislikes. Now that opens up a related question. What to do with the objects then that one likes and dislikes? Play with them. You have all the freedom to like something and dislike something, provided you do not think that what you like will give you fulfillment and what you dislike will take away something precious from you. You have all the freedom to search for a man or a woman or a suitable boy or a suitable girl. You have all the freedom to go and request a woman for courtship, for relationship, marriage if you want, provided you do not think that the relationship is going to provide you with something essential. You must know that a relationship is just a relationship. It cannot be a supplier of essence to me. I am all right with the woman and I am all right without the woman. I am essentially all right. When you are essentially all right even without the woman, then you have all the freedom to chase all the women in the world. Then you are free to marry not one, but as many as you like. Because the women now will not be burdened with fulfilling your hollow. You know what happens when you marry because you feel an inner compulsion, an inner drive to have someone who can fill up your loneliness. You now burden that person with the so-called responsibility to reduce your loneliness, and hence that relationship is bound to fail. That person never wanted to take that burden. Nobody can actually ever take up that burden. But you gave it to him. You loaded it upon him. You said, now you are entrusted with filling up the hole that I have been digging for so long. I am the one who has been digging the hole, and you are the one who will now fill up the hole. Now, that person will fail. That person is bound to fail. That person has his or her own miseries, own hollows to fill. How can he contribute to your fulfillment? Are you getting it? So, go about liking and disliking with total abandon. There is no constraint at all upon you. The world is your playground. All the objects are your playthings. You like something? Go ahead. You dislike something? Avoid. But take both of these a little casually. You must know that even if you fail to avoid, you have not lost much. And you must know that even if you succeed in gaining, you cannot gain much. Why cannot you gain much? Why cannot you gain much? Because you
were completely
already have it. This feeling that I already and unconditionally have it is the essence of healthy living. Without this, you would remain a psychopath.
Aren't there these 4 aims of life which must be fulfilled?
There are no aims that need to be fulfilled. Life is already fulfilled. There remains nothing to be added to it. You're talking about Artha, Dharma, Kam, Moksha. Forget. What moksha do you want? You are already the liberated one. All bondage is an illusion. Now what liberation can you have? You are already the liberated one. All talk of liberation is bondage. Do you see this? So we are saying that there is no need to drop particular and specific things. In renunciation, you drop the one who seeks, desires, aims, achieves, struggles, strives. He is the one you drop. So really in renunciation, you drop the renouncer. The renouncer and the achiever. Things are not to be dropped. Don't get into that foolish business. Somebody is trying to drop some kind of food. Somebody is trying to drop some kind of action. There are people who are dropping clothes. And there are people who are acquiring. Now all this business of acting, behaving in a certain way, dropping this, acquiring that, is so nonsensical. Because it is just a continuation of who you imagine yourself to be. He is the one who finds extension in all this activity. Drop the one and then you have the freedom to play with everyone. Drop that one, that mother of all illness. You know that mother of all illness?
Satisfaction.
Yes, that feeling of discontentment. Drop that. Drop that one. And then play with everyone. Like it, dislike it, achieve something, drop something, plan for something, chase something, reject something, accept something, be attracted to something, feel disgust for something. Play the entire game. The whole range of experiences and emotions is available to you. Go through them. The whole spectrum is yours. Who is anyone to deny you any bit of it? Go ahead. You know, we are rarely able to go ahead.
I have more the notion that someone who has dropped all these desires would
Did we say that you have to drop all this, or are we saying that you have to drop just one? So we have to listen with
only one,
caution.
that he would be like a Ramana Maharishi who don't need
Have
to
we said
chase
that?
anything.
Have we said that?
Yeah, he did not get married, or he did not get...
In listening, one does not compare. We are talking of our own life. We are not talking of the life of someone you never met, never know. All that you have is stories about that person. And if you're living in those stories, then you're living in fancies. Go close to yourself. You don't come here to talk about your neighbor, the sinner and the sage. You come here because there is something that is the matter with you. We take care of that. We are not dropping all that. We are dropping that feeling which drives us because we have allowed it to drive us. We have energized it to drive us. We are saying we do not want to fuel it any further. Whenever we will see that we are acting out of that feeling, that feeling has become our center, our driver, we will refuse to energize it anymore. Even that refusal is not something that you have to decide upon. The moment you observe yourself acting in that way, the refusal just comes by itself. The key word is on its own. It is called grace. It happens on its own, without your effort, without your interference. It happens. Just it happens.
But on the first place, why don't we have firm faith on us that we are complete, we are whole?
No, faith is not about believing that you are complete. Faith is about not having the need to believe that you are complete. We
Say
think,
that one more time.
usually we live in the belief that we are incomplete. When somebody says, no, that belief is false, then we switch to the opposite belief. That opposite belief says, I am complete. None of these is faith. Faith is about not having the need to believe in anything about yourself. Why must I believe in anything about myself? I am what I am. I am what I am, and I need no further description. Am I incomplete? Who bothers? Am I complete? Who bothers? Neither am I incomplete, nor do I bother to say that I am complete. Whatever I will say about myself will create a definition and hence a restriction upon myself. Who am I? Stupid question. don't want to look into this. I am what I am. I am what I am. Secure in just being. Being without definitions, being without appendages, being without needs, desires. That total sense of sureness. So sure that it doesn't even bother to check why is it so sure. That is faith.
So how does that happen?
How does it not happen? You tell me. It is your intrinsic nature. How is it not happening with you?
Okay.
Never ask anything about the cause of the essential. It is an improper question. Never ask how does faith happen. You are asking about the cause of faith. You are asking about the cause of God. Whenever you are asking for a cause, always ask of the cause of the false. Never ask what is the cause of truth. Truth is its own cause. Faith is the cause of faith. So any question, how does it happen? How to reach liberation is a misplaced question. Ask, how is it happening that we think that we are not there? How is it happening that we think that we have lost it? Now that is an appropriate question. Are you getting this? That question is very appropriate. You must ask, how is it that I become a believer? How is it that the one that I am comes to have a self-definition, a belief? The moment you start believing something about yourself, you believe firstly that you are away from faith. All belief is fundamentally disbelief. All belief is fundamentally the belief that you need to believe. Without having a need to believe, would you believe? Now there is a need to believe only when you don't have faith. So comes in belief, and with belief comes in the one who believes, and the believer does not know faith. Do you see this? How to have faith? Being yourself, you want to have faith. Remaining a believer, you want to have faith. That is the import of your question. That is what we want. How to have this? All questions that deal with methods and how-tos are essentially questions that say, okay, here I am, and I am as I am, sitting deep in my hollow, believing deeply in my complexes, and now tell me that remaining in that hollow, how do I reach out to the stars? So all how-tos are just questions of deception. When you do not want to do something, then you ask how to do it. Do you see this?
We drop this unsatisfied one.
No, we don't drop it.
Okay, you fill the hollow.
You cannot fill the hollow. You are still talking the language of the one who is a believer in the discontentment.
You be contented. Okay.
You are contented.
You are contented. Okay,
Yes.
Now you feel that okay. Everything is.
You are contented?
Yes. Yes.
No more questions.
When
No, wait. You see how even contentment is an imagination for us? And when contentment is an imagination, then discontentment continues. Even after saying that, okay, assuming that I am contented,
Yeah.
you continue to ask more questions. If you are contented,
Yeah.
if you are contented,
No, but
would you ask questions that believe in discontentment?
no, the two things. Like one, you said we want to do something. How to do something? You said no. But when you are content, you like now I'm here or at anywhere. Now I am here because something is there, and now that it's like now I feel yes content. This things is good. Tomorrow means I'm content. So,
Then full stop.
full stop.
You know what you were trying to ask? You were saying that because I am discontented, I move around a lot. Because I am discontented, I have energy and movement and objective and purpose. So if I am contented,
We don't.
then life will just come to a standstill.
Yes, sir, I got that. You said that you don't want to do anything. You said no, okay. You don't want to do anything.
When? Where? We want to do so much. Why would I say we don't want to do anything?
By
You
saying
want to
how
do so much.
By saying how to.
See, this is how the whole game proceeds. We imagine what contentment would be like. Then we speculate what would happen after contentment. Then we judge and declare that I do not like what will happen after contentment. Being what I am, I do not like what would happen after contentment. And then we conclude, I do not want contentment. Do you know contentment? And if you know contentment, then you are contented. That's the full stop. And if you do not know contentment, then you are the discontented one. How can the discontented one imagine anything about contentment? But not only do we imagine, we also pass a judgment. We say, you see, after contentment, what will happen is that I will stop acting. The one who becomes fulfilled, why will he move?
Yes.
Why will he act?
That is the thing.
Why will he even eat?
Yes.
What do you know about him? What do you know about contentment? Contentment is God. To say that you know what will happen after contentment is to say that you know God. Have we not said again and again that with that contentment in your heart, you are free to play around in the world? Did we say you stop? But again you are imagining that inner stopping means an outer stopping as well. Do you see this? And that is such a prohibitive imagination. In fact, it is a very purposeful imagination. You are imagining this with a definite and calculated purpose. You are imagining it so that you remain what you are. I am discontented and I am imagining that contentment is something dangerous. Hence I will remain what I am, which is discontented. You see how whole mental operation, and you rely so much upon this mental operation. You trust yourself so much. Even if a sage is talking to you, you first go to a corner and take your own advice. You depend so much upon yourself. You depend upon this foolish thing called the mind. He is your friend. He will advise you and save you. You depend upon this lame and impotent thing called arguments. They will redeem you, or are they the disease? But we won't listen. We will let the inner argument continue. We will fuel it. We feel, that is the final judge. All right, let me listen something from the speaker. And then I will pass it through my own internal tests. Okay, you give me whatever you are giving me. Bring that in, bring that in. Now I have a particular machine and I will pass all your stuff through this machine. And if this machine says that that stuff is acceptable and proper, then I will take it. Now this machine is a foolish machine. That stuff is stuff intended to destroy this machine. And you are using this machine to judge that stuff. Huh? But your individuality is then at stake. Then you say, what does that mean then? Then I don't have to, test what you are saying? Yes, it means that. You don't have to test all this. Inquiry does not mean verification. Inquiry does not mean testing. Inquiry means a deep burning need for the truth. Do you get this? Inquiry does not mean that you will verify, test, counter check. Inquiry means I am inquiring about the truth. I want nothing but the truth. That is the meaning of inquiry. And when the truth is your only priority, then you do not bother yourself with this stupid machine. Are you getting this?
This just reminds me of something. Like now I visited McLeod Ganj in Dalai Lama place today. Before I never, someone like Dalai Lama, I always thought he's not a vegetarian, so he cannot be completely enlightened. So it is the same mistake in my thinking that you can
Yes,
just
of
talk
course. Yes. We use the mind to determine what the truth must be like. We use our benchmarks to create an ideal of what perfection must be like. We use our imagination to paint what God must be like. Will that work? But that is the basis of all our work. Do we want it to be like that? You must see that all of this is so nonsensical. How can you take it seriously? It is a joke. When you see that it is a joke, then you are able to walk past it. Spirituality means don't take yourself seriously. Do you get this? Likes, indulge in them. Dislikes, indulge in them, but don't take any of that seriously. Mind, be with it. Watch its antics. Be entertained by its acrobatics. One does not say that a naughty monkey is one's enemy. Or do you say that? Oh, look at that one. He is my sworn enemy. and then you bring some neutron bomb to destroy the monkey, and you go and consult all the gurus of the world how to kill the monkey, how to tame the monkey. A monkey is a monkey. Naughty, mischievous, sometimes troublesome, but also cute. Nice, friendly if you are. Godly if you are. That's the mind. A naughty monkey. You do not run around doing sadhana to domesticate the monkey. You know, my monkey, he does not obey my commands. And then you are reading scriptures upon scriptures and referring encyclopedias. Monkey Shastras. The mind is a monkey. Let it run around. It likes something, let it like. It dislikes something, let it dislike. You do not need to feel guilty. You remain the master. You remain a loving master. You remain a benevolent master.
Is it true that the mind has to die?
No, it is not at all true. Not at all. In fact, it is a very violent thing to say. Let the mind remain. Let the mind remain like the moon remains even when the sun is there. Have you not seen that? So the sun is infinitely larger, the supplier of light, but the moon is still there. Or are you killing the moon, saying that no, the moon is false because the light is actually coming from the sun? The light might actually be coming from the sun, but the little moon is nice, like a toy. Let it be there. Why do you want to kill it? Sometimes when the sun is hidden from you, the moon provides you light. Even if it is reflected light, even if it is not its own light, but when the sun is hidden from you, the moon provides you a little bit of the light of the sun. Or does it not? So let the mind be there. Why do you want to kill it?
Maybe if the mind is dead, then you have less thoughts and you will be more happy.
Let there be thoughts. All thoughts are like the light of the moon. In daytime, when the sun is out, what does the light of the moon mean? Nothing. There is such a bright light of awareness that now the moon is inconsequential. So similarly, in the vast ocean of awareness, let your thoughts rise and fall. Let your thoughts be rising, falling, taking bath in the ocean of awareness. Aware and still and contented, you are free to think. Now think. There is no limitation upon thought. Think as much as you want to. Think whatever you want to. But be contented. Don't use thought as an instrument of seeking contentment. Thought will not get you that. already contented, think whatever and howsoever much you want to. You have all the freedom. Think of this, think of that. Your entire imagination is free, available and fertile. Go ahead. Just fulfill the basic condition. And then you have total freedom. Do you see this? All this business of mind control, of not letting thoughts come, just is another thought. They say don't think. And what is this? Another thought.
Erase the past, another thought.
Erase the past, another thought. I am saying think as much as you want to.
Be happy with whatever is.
Fill your stomach. Eat whatever you want to, but be contented first. Know that food cannot give you God. Now go to food. But if food has become God for you, then very soon you will be crying out to God to save you from food. You do not need control of thought. You just need to see that the thinker is a buffoon.
I just read this book about this Ramana, and it was said in there that he said he compared this self to the radio, or I forgot what was the radio, the mind or the self. But he said if you take the radio apart, you still don't find the one who is talking in there. And so somehow in the book it said he was like acting directly from the self without the mind or something like that.
That's a lot of mind. That's a lot of mind. When you come up with this kind of a thing, there is this radio, whatever, that's a lot of mind. Every single word is mind. Every single thought, action is mind. All that appears to be or not to be is mind. How will you get rid of mind? Mind is nothing but the very appearance of the pure self. When the great self appears, it appears as the mind. Now what do you want to kill? In killing the mind, do you know who you are trying to kill? God in all his playfulness is mind. This world is the dance of God, and this world is mind. You want to kill the mind? You want to kill the dance of God? You think you can attack Shakti without provoking Shiva? No, we must kill the mind. Now just wait for Shiva's response. They love each other.
The mind is Shakti?
Of course. Of course. All that the mind needs is union with Shiva. It does not need to be killed. You cannot kill it. In fact, talking of killing it is furtherance of the mind. Anything that you want to do with mind is just more mind.
That I will do Vipassana to kill the mind or this.
Of course. I will have this method to kill the mind. This is just more mind. Why don't you see that? The mind does not need to be murdered. It just needs to be submerged. The mind is like a lover crying out for union with the beloved. What do you give it? Union or a knife? The mind cries out, I want to embrace my lover. Let it be embraced, let it be submerged. Isn't it a very cruel, heartless and violent thing to kill a crying lover? The monkey was crying, give me some food, give me some food. And because it was hungry, so it was taking something from here, something from there, plucking a few fruits. And what did you do? You shot at the monkey. How wise is that? The lover was begging, I want to see my beloved, I want to touch him, I want to become one with him. And you stabbed him? Is that godly, really? All is truth. Nothing needs to be eradicated. All needs to be just aligned. And there is a great difference between eradication and alignment. The ego needs to be aligned with its source. The ego needs to be a servant or a lover of its master, the source. It doesn't need to be killed. The ego is all right. Likes and dislikes are all right. The body and the mind are all right. This feeling of being all right is the alignment. The moment it arises, it is all right. And this thing that it is all right is not a statement. It is a great silence. The moment it arises, it is all right. That is a situation of alignment. A oneness, a coherence, a harmony. Yes? Enemies need mediators. Lovers do not need mediators. A mediator is a method. Methods are applicable in this world of enemies, in this world of strife and conflict. But when the mind wants to reach the source, then it is about two lovers who are essentially one. Now what will a mediator do? What will a method do? Have you ever loved? Do you know love? Do you like a middleman in love? Do you like it?
Oh, okay. Come and
Do you like a middleman in love? Go directly, go straight, go without pretensions, go naked. Yes.
Sir, actually perhaps this arises because we don't understand or we don't feel that mind and source, mind wants to meet its source. We don't know source. Perhaps this thing.
What else do you want to meet? What else are you crazy for? Without knowing the self, would you be so deeply crazy for it? Hmm?